Welcome back to Beyond the Stats podcast. This is going to be our second episode. We're going to get a little bit more into sports as a whole on this podcast. We'll have multiple videos throughout the week that'll have them cut up individually, but today we're going to talk basketball, soccer, mainly men's national team, U.S. men's national team, and then get into Formula One as we finish it. So let's just get into basketball. Towards the end of preseason now, who are your big standouts, mainly young guys? I mean, we know Bradley Beal, Steph Curry, LeBron. Who are your young kind of standouts that have surprised you or been where you think they would be?
I mean, if you're going to talk standouts, you have to start with the alien.
Yeah, I'm blown away by that guy.
So I was listening to the JJ Redick's podcast the other day, which is exceptional, by the way. You guys should watch that. It's awesome. And he has an acquaintance that is a part of the staff with San Antonio Spurs.
Oh, really?
And he said that acquaintance was texting him kind of on the build-up in some of the open runs and getting ready coming into the preseason, and just basically said, bro, this guy does things every day we've never seen.
Oh.
Every day.
Well, and people are already seeing that in game. The dunk he had on Thomas Bryant, where Bryant was just like, what?
So they've played him sparingly in the preseason games, and then they played him against the Miami Heat, and the Heat didn't play. Like Adebayo didn't play, Jimmy Butler wasn't there, Hero wasn't there, but the alien Wembanyama
there's no other name.
Played around. I think it was just over 20 minutes. Not a whole ton of minutes, but he did 4 things in that game that when you watch it, you're like, huh? I did, at least. And I'm trying to figure out in my mind what I've just seen. The one was when he catches the ball at the 3-point line, Euro steps, 2-hand dunks like it's nothing.
Right.
Like without losing speed. Goes right around his defender. We've all seen the dunk that he did over Thomas Bryant. Thomas Bryant's look where he looks to the side. It was just kind of a fan's video. And he's just like, oh, what the hell? Like he hasn't experienced that before.
What do I do there?
And Thomas Bryant is not a helpless little player. He's a big dude.
Yeah, and a good defender.
Yeah. Not to mention the block that he had on the game before against the Thunder on Jalen Williams, when Jalen Williams shakes him hard and goes far side of the rim, and he still gets over there and blocks it. Whew. Anyways, that guy.
I thought we'd see a little bit more of what we saw in Summer League, where he kind of comes in and gets pushed around, beat up a little bit, and a little hesitant, shots not falling. He's looked just fine.
Oh my goodness.
That guy is incredible. I am excited to see the next 5-10 years of that guy's career, of what he could, if he stays healthy, what could happen there.
And if you were a great player in a contract year, say Anthony Edwards in a couple of years, why would you not go and play with that guy? How many rings would you haul in?
No kidding.
Anyway, so as far as a young player, I'm super excited to see him during the regular season minutes and what goes on in his development. And
that's my big thing I'm curious to see. I honestly think the only reason he doesn't win Rookie of the Year this year, well, because he doesn't play enough games. You now have to play 65 games.
Maybe, huh?
And there was already talk that the Spurs were going to be resting him quite a bit. Resting him now, whatever they want to call it. But yeah. I don't see him playing over 70 games. Maybe hits the 65 mark.
Yeah, that could very well be a thing. I mean, that's just 17 games. So he's been fantastic. We've been big Scoot fans. We've talked about him.
I've enjoyed watching his physicality immediately, which we knew, but immediately with his development in the G League, that dude is just thick, and grown men try to guard him and he just throws them aside like they're nothing.
The physicality, you also see just some of the smarts of pick and roll basketball, or knowing when to drive and when to pull up. If he gets consistent jumper along with those other factors, wow, fantastic player.
That's the big thing that I loved about him with the Ignite, is with his talent, with the hype around him and everything like that, that's a guy that usually overpresses, forces things, and takes way more shots than he should. He's almost, in my opinion, not taking enough shots. He could be more aggressive looking for his own shot right now.
You could see somebody with those kind of tools just thinking, I'm Russell Westbrook. I can just fly to the rim and do crazy physical feats, right? And you wouldn't blame him, but he's really focused in props to him and the people around him for giving them the right advice and him taking it in to really build his all-around game and be intelligent. And he'll be a fantastic player for it. I can't wait to see it. I only worry that he's maybe not going to have the ball in his hands enough this year because of a great player beside him, Anthony Simons. Anthony Simons is a heck of a player, but it might be a situation that takes the ball out of his hands a little bit. But you can't blame him if they want to play him too. Even if it's the two small guards together, it's as an organization, those are tough decisions, and it would be difficult to break that up.
That's not even talking about Shaedon Sharpe.
Yeah, and Shaedon Sharpe. Man, did it look like his little bump our guy off mid-range jumper just looked like layup after layup? Yeah. It looks so easy.
Yeah, he looks good. A big one that has been a standout to me. I've a friend at work who's a Nuggets fan, so he kind of brought him on for me, but Julian Strawther. I was looking yesterday. He's like top 5 in points per game in the preseason, which, people are in and out, but consistently scoring 20 points a game and looks freaking good. That was the big question with the Nuggets, was their depth, right? Going into this next season, as they lost a couple guys, what was going to happen there? And holy crap, that dude looks like he's ready to step right into that kind of role.
He's a player that stayed at least 3 years in college out of Gonzaga. Did he stay 4 or 3? I can't remember. But they kind of followed a similar pattern as they did with Christian Braun.
Mm-hmm.
The year before, right? Played his full years at Kansas and came out and was a mature player that can shoot. And it may be enough with all the tools they have. I mean, they lost Bruce Brown, Jeff Green. Who else? Trying to think. But he's been really good, and he's even made some defensive plays, if I remember some of the highlights. And that was really his question mark, being scouted coming out of college into the draft. So. He's really stepped forward, and it's interesting which players' skills and traits translate to the next level, which ones don't. Tamani Kamara has looked really good in this preseason.
He has.
He's another second rounder. And the amount of fours that were drafted before him, and I think he did 3 years in college. He did a year at Georgia before he transferred over to Dayton. So
that's the thing about this draft is there's so many later picks that could be special.
We watched Ricky Council IV in Summer League.
Right.
He was a heck of a player.
And he shocked me with how well he looked in Summer League in Salt Lake.
It'll be interesting to see. I haven't tracked them enough, but is he going to get, because Jalen McDaniels left the Sixers, is he going to get in there and find some regular minute playing time? But he's another second rounder that looked like he was ready to step right in.
Right.
Fantastic player.
And then talking guys, not necessarily young guys, but guys that maybe have surprised a little bit. It's one for me that a little bit more near and dear has been Dante Exum's story. There's talk they could start him at the 3 with his size and Doncic's size, and with his defensive abilities, it would help out that team with how much they're going to struggle defensively with Kyrie and Luka. I loved Dante in the draft when Utah drafted him and just couldn't stay healthy and just things didn't work out for him. Seeing him come back this year, I'm excited to see what he does. He's played well in preseason so far. He obviously hasn't put up these huge points and numbers and stuff like that, but he's not that type of guy.
They don't need that. Right?
Yeah, they don't need him to do that. They need him to be able to move the ball. They need him to be able to knock down shots, which he's actually come in and hit like a 40% rate.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure he shot 40% from 3 last year overseas. And then preseason he shot solid. And so if he can do that with his defensive abilities, I'm excited to see a little bit of a resurgence with that guy's career.
It's a great story for him, and he was a good dude, good teammate when he was here in Utah.
Yeah.
Somebody that we cheered for and wanted to succeed. It just didn't happen to fall in line, and those injuries, man, that's in anybody's sporting career, that's something that can jump up and bite you. But he's went overseas and done the work and come back. And if that's something that he can put together, and Dallas could be tough this year between him and Grant Williams filling in some needs. it'll be interesting to see if their two rookies can fill in with Maxence Prosper and Derek Lively.
Right.
If they can really fill some holes, and Dallas could be tough by the end of the season. They could make a run.
They could.
They've
100%.
got offense
It's
out
going
the
to come down
wazoo,
to their defense.
Yep.
Because last year, I mean, they were still an incredible offensive team and didn't even make the play-in.
Yeah, it was an incredible slide they had at the end of the year. So that'll be fun to watch them. Even though it'll be more fun for me to cheer against them. Sorry, I tipped my hand there. I can't wait to see, speaking of the Dallas Mavericks, I want to see Luka, see if he can get to the point where he kind of matures emotionally for that team. They really need that for him to step up and be some more of a leader. I mean, we saw the way that Jokic in the playoffs in the end of the season really worked his tail off on defense and something he wasn't really good at.
So my biggest concern with Doncic from day one, and it's gotten worse and worse and worse, has been his maturity.
Mm-hmm.
He's a guy that I feel like is going to put up these incredible numbers throughout his career and be seen as an incredible player. Is he a guy that I think can go lead a team to a championship? Right now, I would say no. And it's because of those things. He's not just been a pro for, 4 years in the NBA, 5 years in the NBA? He's been a pro for like 8 years.
Yeah.
Overseas, he was a pro for 3 or 4 years before he came over.
He was the MVP of the EuroLeague, I believe, as a teenager still.
Yes.
That's insane.
And so this guy has been a pro for 6, 7, 8 years. He still has not matured whatsoever when it comes to the way he addresses refs and things like that and handles himself on the court. He still, every season, will come into training camp in shape. Midway through the season, he's all of a sudden out of shape again. And that's happened every season. And there were some guys, some Dallas Mavericks, a show that I was listening to, that's been like the weirdest thing, is that he'll come in solid shape and they'll be like, oh, Luka's ready to go. And then midway through the season, it's like, did he get fat? Like, what happened? So there's so many things that people want to still talk about how young he is, but this dude's been a pro for 7, 8 years and has yet to take those steps that he needed to. There comes a point where it's like, is he ever going to make that? Or is he just going to be one of these guys that puts up these incredible numbers? And that's kind of what you get.
We saw it a couple of years ago with Devin Booker. I mean, for a number of years, Devin Booker was just getting his numbers, shooting up shots, right? Really wasn't leading them, really wasn't scrapping on defense, wasn't doing the things to win.
Right.
And all of a sudden it snapped. In 1 year, he came in, and it was very evident. Just say, holy cow, Devin Booker's locked in.
And and that dude's, I hated him when he was young. I could not stand that dude. And incredible scorer for sure, but I could not stand him. And it's because of those things. And he's slowly become one of my more favorite players because of his maturity, but also the way he's evolved as a ball player.
And that's kind of what we hope happens for Luka Doncic, or maybe we don't. But
it's hard to want that when you're a Jazz fan,
right? Because he would just smack us. He already has. But you need to have that mentality of a leader in being able to grind on defense, and that's what Jalen Brunson brought to the Mavericks when he was there that year.
Right.
And that's what he's doing for the New York Knicks as well. So that'll be interesting. I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about just kind of the Utah Jazz and their substitution patterns, just a little bit more.
Okay.
So as I'm kind of going through this and deducing and looking at the substitution patterns, we obviously talked about it. Everybody knows we have a number of combo guards, 4 of them, and Chris Dunn, 5, trying to find a spot and get playing time.
Right.
And it looks like Will Hardy has come up with the only way that he can to get all of them on the court during the game,
which is run 4 guards.
Sometimes it's run 4 guards, and it means that there's Ochai Agbaji has been pushed to the 3 and sometimes the 4 because of it.
Yeah.
And so there's two players whose minutes are down lower than I think they should be because of that. And I think it's Ochai Agbaji and Walker Kessler. I think his minutes are
He's been
lower than they should be.
right because, I mean, who knows what happens when we hit the regular season, but him and Tucker have been our two lowest starter minutes every single game.
Yeah, and so Kessler's the first one out on the rotation every time. They bring in Kelly Olynyk, and that's usually 4 minutes in.
Yeah.
Maybe 5 into the first and the third quarters. So it's interesting. You can see what Will Hardy is trying to do, and you can make the argument for every one of our combo guards why they should be in and get the playing time and what they bring to the table, because they're all strong players, right? That's part of our strength as a team is our depth 1 through 12. But it's kind of pinching some minutes for a couple of the players down the line there. And it'll be interesting to see if that evolves a little bit as the season goes along, or if there's some trades. Obviously, the front office has shown that we're interested in getting better if the fit is good right now.
And that's a big thing
that'll be interesting to watch.
That's a big thing is once we actually hit the regular season, what do these minutes truly look like? It's funny enough you mentioned trades. Something came out today that the Houston Rockets have a couple guys that they're targeting. They mentioned Malcolm Brogdon, one other guard, and then
Malcolm Brogdon.
Yeah,
that is interesting.
And then it mentioned Taylor Horton Tucker. Those are it's come out that those are kind of the 3 guys Houston is.
So that's obviously
right
backup point guard.
Yes,
because they're not going to put Fred VanVleet on the bench, paying him $43 million a year, whatever it is.
6-man type player that it seems like they're looking for.
And at the 2s and the 3s, they have plenty of bodies.
Mm-hmm.
They want to give us
Asar Thompson.
Amen Thompson.
Or is it Amen?
Yeah,
Amen Thompson.
Yeah, Amen Thompson.
I
accept your terms.
That's what confused me when I saw it was all these guys they named that are targets for them right now are backup point guard, like you said, immediately backup point guard. Isn't that why they drafted Amen Thompson to be a point guard?
That's interesting because, and we alluded to this, I think on the first podcast, number 1. If you would go back and watch that, we talked about how Houston, they've gone through the worst 3-year stretch in the organization's history. And they're making a lot of noise of we're a grown-up team. We have veterans. We're competing now. And that's a thing that's great for them. And they've made some moves and they signed some big contracts in the offseason. But that's also a point of leverage that if I were in the Jazz front office, I would be making phone calls about like crazy.
That's the thing is how much do they like Tucker? And is there someone else? Maybe they're looking for Olynyk, another veteran, to bring over to that team. Is there a way what would you be willing to offer to get Thompson over here?
What would I be willing to offer?
Yeah.
So, I mean,
realistic, right?
Any of our combo guards not named Keontae George.
I would agree with that. I love Agbaji. Everyone who's watched these videos knows I love Agbaji. I would do that trade.
Yeah.
Just because of his potential. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so we wouldn't. I would prefer to keep Agbaji.
I'd prefer that.
But Amen Thompson is, and he's hit a decent amount of jumpers in the preseason when I've watched him, and they've done really well as a team. Actually, really explosive in transition, offense and defense. And part of that is adding Cam Whitmore and Amen Thompson to out of your draft class. I would be willing to give up any of our combo guards not named Keontae. And a first, to be honest, as long as it was one of them that we didn't feel that was, I don't know, like I probably wouldn't give up the Lakers 27 pick.
Yeah.
I'd probably do one of the...
Hoping that they implode by then. And
right. Even though they restocked
LeBron's
up
gone
and depth.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, I would, just because he's shown some ability as a versatile open court defender and ball mover. I think that Asar is more of a triple-double waiting to happen every night, but Amen is a special talent as well.
So let's say they call him up and they say they want Tucker, Sexton, or Clarkson, or Baji, another one of the guards. Let's say Sexton. Olenek and a first, and then there's another player on their team to make contracts work.
I think that accumulation of talent is worth it. You may say would be giving up 3 and a first for one, but to land that kind of a talent that's going to be exploding over the next few years. And one thing about the Thompson brothers is everybody who works with them says they are pros.
Yeah,
they approach
yep.
it the right way.
Yep.
Great attitude, great work ethic. Locker room guys. To me, I would do that. It would be worth it.
I think it would make more sense for them to want Clarkson with what they're trying to do. Still not clear if we can actually trade Clarkson or not. I think we can with the way his contract was structured.
Yeah, that's true.
With the rules on that, but it would make more sense that they would want Clarkson in that type of trade. But I don't know. I'm intrigued to see if something happens there. It kind of like when Jazz name got popped up for the Rockets, who are obviously trying to be a win now organization.
And is that a move for them trying to replace in their mind what they thought Kevin Porter Jr. was going to be coming into the season?
Maybe.
Because most likely he's going to be out of the league.
Yeah.
If that all comes through. So that would be interesting. That would be a great pickup. And that's kind of the race that we're in. We alluded to this on the first podcast as well, is we have to be able to find a way to assess our talent and combine it and come out with a higher level. I'm messing up on the word right now here, but it's we're in a battle with teams like the Oklahoma City Thunder, like Portland, who's put together a real talented young group, and Houston, and we've got to have some of these players be traded up for bigger talents that fit and play that game.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see kind of what happens over the first part of the season if we make moves and what those are.
Wonder what's going on in Will Hardy's head, trying to figure out those rotations.
Yeah.
If he's like, I got to figure out a way to get all these guys on the court, and here's the only way that I can do it, so I'm going to roll with this for a bit. And
who knows what kind of discussions he's having with Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck, right? Yeah.
Because there's players like Sexton who struggle a little bit in the preseason, but we know that he's explosive and can really perform, and it may be just a little bit, and he'll be up to his old ways and playing great. And then we'd be grateful for it.
For sure.
Interesting.
But yeah. Let us know what you guys think about kind of the future of the young guys and the Jazz, what trades you want to see. I'm kind of curious to see what happens there.
As am I.
So let's talk soccer.
And that's near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, so for you guys, I'll let Sean kind of give a little bit of a backstory on his credibility, I guess, to talk about this stuff.
So I had the opportunity over a number of years to work with a professional organization as their youth scout, as one of them, and to start building some of the youth programs. I also had the opportunity to work and be a part of some international, just kind of little blips on the radar as well. Overseas, and even have some consulting stuff that I'm still doing now, as we speak.
Yes.
And that's something that we can, maybe let you know about soon. But
hopefully,
it's soccer or football around the world is a sport that I didn't grow up, playing or being super close to, but just kind of through my experiences in life and where I've had the chance to go and live, it's grown to be the number one sport in my heart, and I love the beautiful game, and love the chances that I had to scout youth and see youth that are working to perfect their craft and just kind of expressing joy out on the field, and man, it was awesome, and still love it to this day. Stopping off and watching games, the wife will be like, "Who are you going to watch?" And I'll be like, "Oh, you don't know them." You're like, "Why are you going to watch them?" Because I love it.
Because I enjoy it.
Because I can. It's what I do. So it's I really enjoy the level of intellect, and kind of the playing chess, as opposed to some sports kind of are a little bit more like playing checkers, right? In my mind, and I love the intelligence of the sport, and it's a joy to talk about it. And we just kind of went through a World Cup year, right?
Right.
And we watched some of the World Cup together matches. What do you remember about this last World Cup? What stood out to you?
Man, I feel like that was like 10 years ago.
It was late last year. It was the Winter World Cup, right? Because it was in
Right.
Qatar.
Right. A big thing, I mean, for me, I focus mainly on the U.S. That's what I've enjoyed watching the most, obviously. But we kind of talked about it before. We knew that team wasn't ready yet, but was excited to see what kind of some of our young guys could
Loved the
do.
youth, right?
Yeah,
Super young team.
and that's a big thing. Is there were some younger players that impressed that I didn't expect to come out and play as well. I've been blown away, and even till now with Weah and the way that dude's developed, and I'm hoping we can get, as we start preparing and playing friendlies and stuff right now, we can get the right players on the field and not waste this time for American soccer. Because as a U.S. soccer fan, this is one of the best times to be a U.S. soccer fan because of how many young, really good players are playing around the world right now.
We are in the pool of U.S. talent. It's getting deeper than we've ever had it. Now, that doesn't really solve all the issues, and we still have Greg Berhalter as our coach. And I'm not a huge fan of the Berhalter situation, nor his brother, nor the hiring situations that brought him on. Which, if you want us to go into that, comment, let us know. We'll talk about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, 100%.
There's a lot of conflict of interest things that have gone on for a long time with our U.S. national program and kind of the powers that be. But the World Cup to me was fantastic to see Argentina's run.
That's
One of the
true.
best finals in
That's
the
true.
history of the game. It was great to see Messi finally get his World Cup, and trophy and get through that. The all the Argentine fans that were saying that he wasn't as good as Maradona because he hadn't won a World Cup yet, which though that's the standard you're at when you're in Argentina.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
But I mean, Messi, to me, one of the top, 2, 3 greatest of all time. He could easily be number one. Fantastic player, and that was really awesome to see the emotions, to see Argentina's next friendly that they had in the fans' reception and the fireworks and everything was
Yeah,
awesome.
that was cool. That was really cool to
Was
see.
incredible, and the respect that he got, so fantastic. And they beat a great French team in the final, and how that all went down, that was really enjoyable. The U.S. had spurts where we looked pretty good and aggressive. It seems like we kind of overran ourselves, and in the second half of each game, we kind of really struggled. There's some players that were left off of the team that were mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And
That
that was unbelievable.
That just don't make sense.
Yeah. The forwards that we took and we still left off Ricardo Pepi is mind-boggling to me, just because his hold-up play is really valuable in a forum like that. Was pretty questionable. But overall, love the World Cup time of year, just the level of competition. We ended up going out against Netherlands, and one of the quotes from the Dutch coach was just kind of laughing that we didn't ever make an adjustment in the game from the way that they pressed us.
Right.
Which they just put their forwards in between our center backs and our outside backs, which was our main channel of passing, and instead beat simple pressure up through the middle. And we couldn't.
We can't. That's the thing is, as these couple friendlies have happened, we're running into the same problems.
Now tonight, I just got done watching the U.S. play Ghana, and we put it on them. That was the combinations of Balogun playing at the forward spot with Timothy Weah at the right wing and Serginho Dest going up the right side, and Claudio Reyna's son Gio, and how he creates. Maybe we shouldn't bring up his parents. But the way that he creates, so we have a real problem in our U.S. soccer culture with having a real midfielders culture. We have tried to fix that by putting out runners.
Right.
And Tyler Adams is a physical specimen with what he's able to do, with
Right.
how physical he is and how much he runs and how much he does out there. It's amazing. And I'm fine with having somebody like that out there, but I just really struggle when we try to play McKinney in there beside him.
That's
The
and
whole
that's the big problem is having one of them. Either one is fine. It's needed, but when you put both of them in the middle together, it just there's no technical ability at that point in the midfield at all.
not at the World Cup level, right? The MMA thing does not work, and I would say that Kellen Acosta is kind of along the same lines. And these are all fantastic players. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
I'm just saying that at the world's top stage, we cannot have runners as midfielders. You know, it's a situation where you're playing chess against the top midfielders around the world, and they will all run and work hard. Yeah, it's true that Tony Cruz isn't going to log as many miles as Tyler Adams. It's just not going to happen.
For sure.
But his level of positioning and reading the game and seeing 3 passes ahead and understanding the why and how to put it there just puts it at another level. And we don't create enough space and passing lanes. Now, one thing that this group has really done is a lot of the quick showing to the ball, layoff, the wall passes in short spaces that we're kind of pulling off that are very nice. But when we get up against the top organized pressing defenses, like this is kind of why Japan really exposed us when we played them in a friendly.
Right.
And they handled us. It was 2-0, but they handled us.
Right.
It's because they have an organized press and they're smart about it. So our little layoffs and our 1-2s and everything don't always work, and we can't play the tactical ball of playing out of pressure smart and quick switches of the ball fast enough to get the defensive moving to create the holes and the gaps. That's basically what it comes down to. But this week we've had some friendlies that are always fun. Greg Berhalter is brought back in as coach, so we're going to ride this one out. But I do like a lot of our young players. Pulisic has shown that he's explosive.
Well, and that's the big thing about these young players is for a couple of years we were just Pulisic was Captain America and the savior of U.S. soccer, but he's not Messi, right? He's not someone who's just going to go and be this superhero. He needs
when we get him the ball at midfield facing towards his own goal, he's not going to get. It's not going to result in goals. We have to be able to be technical enough and sophisticated enough to get him the ball running downhill towards the goal in the final third already.
Yep. 100%.
When we get that, he will be dangerous and he can play on a world level and is a fantastic player. He'll be 28 this next World Cup, which is going to be in Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. Most of the games in the U.S.
Yeah.
And what a great opportunity for the U.S. team. And man, if we can get kind of Berhalter and Gio Reyna over some of their past of what happened after the World Cup and kind of
during and after,
right? Yeah, for those of you that don't know, it was, Berhalter kind of was letting him know that he wasn't going to play in any games, worth any note, and Gio kind of started to get ticked and wasn't playing well. Some of his teammates even called him out. He apologized, came back out, said it's okay, we'll leave it as a team. And then afterwards, the coach basically, after the World Cup, talked to people about it openly, and it was reported back, and it was kind of a big kerfuffle. And then Gio Reyna's parents got involved and threw out some dirt because they're friends with Berhalter from back in the past. Anyways, and it got ugly that way. So I would love to see, if I were to say right now, I would be fine with a Tyler Adams, Yunus Musa at the 8, and let Gio Reyna create at that 10.
I would agree.
Keep Pulisic out on the left wing. Balogun gives us our best forward right now as far as showing and then also combining and running into space. Whereas like Pepe and Sargent, they're really good hold-up players.
Yeah.
And they're a little bit bigger and more physical maybe for set pieces. But Balogun in his one finish tonight was the ball comes across the 6. He does a little body feint, touches it around, and then just top corner. Some of his finishes are really nice. And so for out of this group, he gives us the best chance. Timothy Way on the right side, and then Chris Richards and Miles Robinson seem to be our future, the center backs in the back. But they looked really strong tonight. Got to give that to them.
Yeah.
Offensively creative, and that was a Ghana team that was playing their players. They had Thomas Partey, they had Jordan Ayew, Mohamed Kudus was out there. And some talented players, but we shredded them, especially up that right channel. It was fun to watch.
That's my big thing. I'm really excited about going forward with U.S. Soccer is this front unit that we are able to kind of throw out there and create with if we put the right guys like Gio Reyna in the midfield. Gives them the great opportunities, but I mean, it's shown that where we can take advantage going up the right like that, Pulisic is very good flying into the middle. So it puts, not only are we getting it down the field in the right players, with the right people, we also are getting Pulisic in the best situation. So it seems this front is not just good for Pulisic, it's good for the future of our team. It's good for development. And so that's been really cool to watch ever since kind of Weah and Des stepped into their roles. I'm excited to see what happens over the next season or two with Pulisic at AC Milan. Mm-hmm. I think that change has been really good for him. Getting some consistent minutes starting most of the time is going to be really important for his trajectory to be where we need him to be. Some of the other guys will kind of see what happens as they mature into their primes and things like that.
Indeed. And the amount of kids that are moving over to Europe and playing now is the highest that it's ever been.
Which is a good thing. It's a good thing.
It's a very good thing. You could easily make the argument that with the amount of kids that we have flowing into our academy structures and through the club ball here, that we should accidentally be producing more players that are approaching the world-class level. I would dare say we haven't, U.S. has never had a world-class player.
Right.
Yet. We've had some players that have gone through amazing barriers and done some things against the odds, but we should have more just by the numbers. I mean, there are some countries out there that have a population that is 1/5 of the amount of registered youth soccer players we have in this country that have multiple Ballon d'Or winners.
Right.
And so there's something, and that's not just because it's the top sport over there. This is an argument we run into. The typical American arguments of, well, soccer isn't big here just because it isn't the top sport. Well, that's weird because Germany has produced an NBA MVP. We've had tons of Hall of Famers out of all different countries through Europe.
Yep.
The last 5 MVPs of the NBA were born outside of the U.S.
Right.
And these are out of countries where basketball is not the top sport. And this excuse doesn't fly.
And that's the problem, is that the excuse, the argument everyone wants to make is if we put guys like LeBron James on the field, we would make, we would be incredible. And that's not the point. And that's not going to do anything for us. That's going to make us worse.
When somebody says that, immediately that they're not really in tune with what development looks like and what that is. Despite 100%. LeBron being a fantastic athlete.
Right.
In soccer, he would not be a top athlete with having the foot control and be able to keep it under there. May have been a great goalie if he would have trained at that since he was a youngster.
Right.
Maybe. That's funny because another academy coach and I one time were at lunch and we were with another fellow that we worked with and that also worked for a professional organization, turned and said, "Can you imagine if LeBron James played soccer?" And the other two of us just kind of looked at each other and just like, wow, can't believe we're hearing this. But that's kind of some of the stuff you hear in the U.S. But don't want to, don't want to be a super, Debbie Downer on it all, because there are some exciting times with the amount of youth we have in there. We're still not to a level where we're really can play with the big boys of the world. We're still not. Tonight Uruguay beat Brazil, and it was for the first time in 22 years. I want to say it was in Brazil. I'll have to double check. I might be off on that. But think about Uruguay and what they do. What's their population? their country. I think it's like 5 million.
Yeah, it's not much.
Right. It's like half the size of New Jersey. And they do stuff like that. So we have to get to the point of, yes, celebrating our victories and having fun with what our national team does and some of their failures too, and living through that, but being willing to take the steps and admit and push for a better way of developing our youth and understanding there's a higher intelligent way to develop youth and get them ready for our national team. And I think that eventually, once our national team becomes a winner, that it will then be celebrated in a way that, some kids in the inner city, instead of, shooting hoops, they're over there, they're kicking around a ball. And all of a sudden that culture will start to steamroll. And once we have a culture like that and an identity that comes along, that's when it would become special. That's the gravy on top. So, but love these times of years when all the friendlies are happening and all the games this week, and sometimes yelling at my TV and disgust, and other times happy.
Yeah. No, I'm just excited to see kind of what the future next few years holds for U.S. soccer, and just kind of what can come from it. It's a good, like I said, it's a good time to be a U.S. soccer fan. So, if you've been wanting to maybe get into it or anything like that, now's a pretty good time.
This buildup is special to the summer of 2026 for the next World Cup. It's in the U.S. It will be a fantastic event, and we should have one of the better results that we've ever had out of the U.S. national team, not counting 1930.
Right.
When there were like 8 teams total in it.
Right. Here's the hoping for that.
So it should be special. It's for people, most of the time we've done enough to get out of group play in World Cup, and then sometimes we've won the next game after that. Sometimes, I think like one time. And that was the 2002 year with the group when he ended up going out to Germany in the round of 16. But most of the times we usually lose that first game right out of group play. And so understand that is the standard that we should be able to beat in 2026. And just getting out of group play is not good enough. And we need to start holding the organization and the coaches responsible for why aren't we getting these results?
Yeah, 100%.
The amount of money and the amount of kids and athletes and people flowing through our organizations, it has to be better. So that's what I'm about. Anyways, we'll talk about this stuff through the year. Something I love.
Yeah, as things progress, for sure. Cool. Formula One. It's growing a little bit in the U.S. A lot of it. It's growing a lot of it right now. Drive to Survive obviously has a big part of that. It's brought more viewers to it and more American viewers.
That's how I got onto it.
That's
for sure. Did I show that to you?
Yeah, actually.
I think I did tell you about it. You may have already seen some of it, but that's what got me into it. It was a great series, and loved it.
And there's things that are exaggerated in it. It's a TV show, but it's always fun to watch. That's where I kind of started watching Formula One, and then have just fallen in love with the sport, to where my wife somehow fell in love with the sport, and we watch it every single race weekend. We try to catch as much as we can. Sometimes it's a little bit harder being an American Formula One fan, because most of the stuff is on the other side of the world and the middle of the night. So you got to do a lot of recording and following up. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about this season and kind of your thoughts on it. A lot of it has been what I've shown you and talked to you about. But the biggest surprise for me has been Max Verstappen. We all know how dominant he was. There was no question how dominant Red Bull and how dominant Max Verstappen were going into this season. I didn't expect it to take until this past race weekend that we had for a non-Red Bull winner. And 2 of those races were Checo. Beyond that, it's been Max Verstappen. And it's not like he's barely winning. It's 20, 30, 40 seconds, to the point of there's been several weekends where he has argued with his race engineer to be like, let's get pit stop practice and go for the fastest lap.
Go to the soft tires at the end of the
and go
of
for
the
the
race.
fastest lap and get an extra point. And it's to the point where there was one race where he was legitimately, because he had just done a pit stop, warming up his tires, just nice and weaving in front of Leclerc. He's like 5 seconds ahead of Leclerc and just weaving, and it's just like this is a different type of level that I've ever seen in any sport.
Verstappen is obviously a machine, right? If it comes out one day that he's a robot, we'd all be like, yeah, right, that makes sense, and then combine that this year with obviously Red Bull has got their mechanical side and their power drive and all that stuff in tune. And so it's hit an insane level. Sometimes I wish the races were a little bit more exciting and some back and forth, but you have to admire what's going on, right?
Yeah. No,
and by the way, I think I'm wearing
wearing your Red Bull hat.
Yeah, a guy I know went to Austria and picked up this hat for me for the F1 racing.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah, that was some good looking out, and that was also the trip that I got the call at like 6 a.m. FaceTime
when you were like in the 7.
I don't know, man. It felt like 4. Anyways, I get some FaceTime call, and I know he's over in Europe.
I was in the middle of the Swiss
Alps, and he's FaceTiming me. Look at this, dude, and I'm trying to wipe the eye boogers out of my eyes. It was a pretty awesome trip, but good looking out on that one, dude.
But yeah, was able to go to a Red Bull World store in Austria, get a couple things from Red Bull. Really cool experience. And obviously today I'm wearing my McLaren hoodie. It is more specifically a Daniel Ricciardo hoodie. I know that's very American of me to be a fan of Daniel Ricciardo, but I'm so excited to see that guy back on the grid. And obviously, he freaking went and hurt himself like one weekend in, but he is back. He will be back this weekend for Austin. He's been partying in Nashville and stuff like that, so he is all about the Austin race.
He is the person. Even the stretch when he wasn't even in a race car, he was like the personality of the shows and of the what do they call that, the paddock there and the racing area. And
that's the thing, is the amount of times they would show him during the middle of the race, and I was really excited to see him go back to Red Bull this year. I've been kind of hit and miss on a fan of Red Bull. That's neither here nor there, but Red Bull, I think Ricciardo kind of figured out that he should have never left. He's done that a couple times.
Yeah, that's been a full circle thing, right?
Yeah, and then it was something I was hoping for last year, hearing Christian Horner talk about that if he was Alpine, if he was any of these teams looking for a driver, the first person they would go to is Daniel Ricciardo. Obviously, I believe Alpine is originally came from Renault. Mm-hmm. So there was a little bit of bad blood there. And Christian Horner had talked about that Ricciardo was too good of a racer with what was happening with them as a team with losing some of their racers, to not bring in Daniel Ricciardo. And because he was extremely successful for them.
And when you first started telling me that Christian Horner was saying these things about him, I was surprised. But Christian Horner is a cold-blooded killer.
Yep.
And if that dude is giving you compliments, especially being with another team out there, it's well earned. So, yeah, I was very skeptical at first, but obviously it came true, and that'll be interesting to see what the future holds. So he's on the AlphaTauri.
So he's with AlphaTauri right now. They just signed him for next season. The big question was Liam Lawson came out, raced really well. And there was some concerns. Was Ricciardo now going to lose his seat? Was Yuki Tsunoda going to lose his seat? But AlphaTauri signed both of them for next season. They're both under contract for next season officially now. And Liam Lawson, I believe, is the third driver. I could be wrong there, but cool to see AlphaTauri make that kind of commitment. Obviously, a lot of that is it's Red Bull, right? I'm excited to see Ricciardo. I hope he can make some headway this year. It felt like when they brought him back to Red Bull that they were preparing him to replace Checo.
It looks like that. And F1 is
it's a
brutal
weird,
that
weird.
way. It's brutal that way.
But the thing is, it makes sense. And the reason it makes sense is if Ricardo can get to back to any sort of level he was at with Renault or Red Bull, um, with the way they're at, he's going to be pushing enough to still be giving you guys constructors championships. But he's at a point in his career where he would be comfortable with coming in and understanding Max Verstappen is the guy, and he's not going to try to take that from Max Verstappen. A guy like Checo wants to take over Max Verstappen, which is normal.
Right.
But Ricardo would come in understanding his role and accepting that and being focused on being the best teammate he could be. He's also somebody who knows how to handle Max as a teammate. They've been teammates before, and ever since he's left, they've become almost closer to where they're extremely close. So
you have to ask yourself, if he had stayed there this whole time, right, would that have ever happened?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. It's
He
weird
needed
how
to go get his ass kicked.
that big breakup kind of falling on his face in a few different spots. And you know, we got the Drive to Survive version, which is overly dramatic, and who knows how accurate that stuff was.
But you could see on the track, there was something, he just didn't care anymore.
But I think that because of this, that he now will come in and be a better, you know, even though they're supposed to be teammates and competing against each other and going against each other's job, but he'll be a better support driver there.
He will be similar to what Valtteri Bottas did for Lewis Hamilton in all those championships runs, where there was a lot of times where realistically he just kind of, even though he could push, moved off to the side so that Hamilton could go win it. There was times where he pushed the limit on that. For the most part, was an incredible teammate and didn't necessarily challenge Lewis Hamilton. Red Bull wants that. Christian Horner wants two dominant drivers, but at the end of the day, the most important thing to them is keeping Max Verstappen happy. Yeah. It is at the end of the day. Ricardo is if he can get back to any sort of form, he is the perfect person for that seat.
Man, that'll be interesting to see. And it really looks like Checo's getting set up to be out again. He's been part of controversies in the past with that.
Yep. So we'll see. That obviously won't come to fruition until next year. About this point, we'll probably start hearing that. I'm really curious to see that. Let's mention McLaren. They're kind of the surprise of the season to me. I thought they were going to be the laughingstock. And to start the year, they were. And they kept saying, well, we've got upgrades coming. But everybody says that.
Right.
Everybody, we've got upgrades coming. They'll be here. And there was no question Lando Norris, his ability, which, by the way, Lando Norris for you guys is my wife's favorite driver. I hope they never meet. I may lose my wife. But there was no question, even Max Verstappen at the start of this year, he talked about Charles Leclerc, talked about George Russell, and he talked about Lando Norris, that if they had the same car as him, they could give him a run for his money. Now, we hadn't really seen that yet from Lando fully put together, and holy crap, the last 5-6 weekends, he has put it together. But not just him.
Not just Lando,
McLaren as a whole. Oscar Piastri has blown expectations out of the water.
It's great to see a young guy do that. We were kind of hoping that Logan Sargent would be in that same realm, but we all know that the Williams car isn't going to be able to hang with them. But Oscar Piastri has got the results lately.
Yeah, he has. I mean, I didn't love the way things went down with him last year, but there's no question he can freaking race.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned Logan Sargent. As American fans, it was awesome to hear that there was once again going to be an American on the grid. That was such a cool thing to see, and I think for a lot of people has been disappointing the way the season's gone out. He's actually, without counting Ricardo, who's raced like 1.5 races, he's the only racer besides Nick DeVries that's raced several races to not get a point. That's hugely disappointing to see. One, he's in a Williams car. As real as that is, he's in a Williams. But two, there was some talk. They knew Logan Sargent wasn't ready. He was a rookie in Formula in F2. He was a rookie there when he did what he did. There was a good amount of knowledge that Logan Sargent was not ready this season. But they wanted him in the seat because they wanted to be able to develop him and not lose the chance to get him in the seat next year.
Right.
So you take a year of pain and suffering, and if you can be patient with that, you might get something special. You don't know. But as American fans, we got to kind of look back, take a seat back and be patient with this season. And now, if next season this time it's the same exact scenario, then it's like, well, freak. But until then, you got to be patient with Logan Sargent. Huge support of Logan Sargent. I want nothing more than for that guy to be successful. I've loved seeing he's put together several race weekends that during practices that he has really seemed to figure it out, and then just hasn't quite clicked yet in qualifying. A couple weekends he's had solid qualifyings, and then the race just something always happens. But you can see the progress there. You can see the practices that he's starting to put together on the weekends, that he's starting to have really good race weekends up until that point. And so I'm excited to see what he can do to finish the season, hopefully get some points, and then what he can do going into next season and that growth that we'll see. And hopefully he's able to make that next jump.
That'd be great to see, having an American driver in there, and it'd be great for F1 as well. I mean, they have a Canadian driver and a U.S. driver, a Mexican driver, right? Just kind of capturing the different parts of the world, and so. But yeah, we definitely are cheering on Logan Sargent, hoping he gets it. And he's a young kid out of Miami, right? Is where he grew up. Yeah, love to kind of see as much of the content on him that I can find out there.
100%.
And if there's anything you guys want us to discuss and jump on about, whether it's Logan Sargent in particular or F1, or let us know, hit us up.
We got a Las Vegas race coming out soon.
Is that next month?
It's almost exactly a month from today.
Awesome.
And that's going to be incredible right down the strip. So we will be definitely talking more F1 going forward.
Yeah, that'll be insane. I can't wait till that race. It would be unbelievable to be down there. I heard about some of the charges and requirements that they're making of stores and not stores, just businesses along the raceway and stuff. They're insane.
That's going to be an incredible weekend. We got Austin this weekend. That's going to be an incredible weekend too, and hoping for a really exciting return of Daniel Ricciardo at his favorite track.
That is his favorite track. I didn't know that one.
Several of them love Austin, but several of them have said Austin's one of their favorite tracks, and Ricciardo, it's his favorite track to race at.
It's his favorite track. If you can't tell, I mean, Cole and I kind of got into this about the same time. I'm very much a casual fan. I enjoy it. He's gotten much deeper into it.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of something that we do with our sports viewing schedules, I guess, as we go along.
Yeah.
We dig it.
Let us know what you guys think and what you'd like to hear more about, what sports you may want to hear more about. We are kind of in a little bit the buckets of most of them. But yeah, thanks, guys.